Welcome to Leadership Beyond Burnout. It's the show that's here to help you and your teams heal, lead, and succeed. I'm Dr. Kimberly L. Wilson, be your guide today on this journey to resilience, growth, and transformation. Now, during the show, together we'll dive into stories, strategies, and insights that not only inspire but empower real change in the way that you work and connect. Now, whether it's a fresh ideas for resilience or practical steps to create balance and joy, each episode is packed with tools to elevate your workplace and your life. I want to welcome to all our new listeners and to all our fired up friends returning week after week. We're thrilled to have you back. Today, I'd like to introduce our guest, Shanila Sattar. She is the founder of Flow Breathwork Facilitator Training. She's a best-selling author of Breathe and a fourth-generation sound healer, a women's researcher, national speaker, and host of a top 6 podcast, The Playground. She is the creator of Healing Arts Academy, where she trains sound healers, breathwork facilitators, and mentors aspiring healers in the healing arts. You can find her work at alwaysplay.org. Make sure that you engage us during the show. You can send in questions and don't hesitate to connect with us at any time at drkimberlywilson.com. Today's episode is proudly sponsored by Leadership and Resilience Consultants, which is dedicated to building healthy workplace cultures and equipping women with the tools to overcome and prevent burnout. And without further ado, let's bring on Shanila Sattar.
Hey.
Hey, welcome. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Kimberly.
I want to just dive right in and learn about how you bring healing to the world.
Oh my goodness. I mean, just by existing, you know what I mean? There's so many facets to that question. I think, there's my work, which is all about nervous system regulation and perfectionism, healing through people pleasing, overachieving, the imposter syndrome. There's also healing through music. I explored things in music and breath and sound and lots of different pathways to getting your nervous system regulated.
So that is more than a mouthful. Now, your path to doing this work, I did hear that you're fourth generation. I'm curious, was there a point in your life where you found like, oh, my nervous system is just out of whack and you had to build this process by yourself for yourself, or was there some other reason?
Yeah. So, I mean, for listeners, let me break down the nervous system in the first place, which is basically your body's antenna that determines whether or not you feel safe. And a bunch of years ago, I would say about 15 years from today, from wherever it is that we're recording this in 2024, I was in research science and looking at what keeps girls interested in math and sciences. And I started to find that there was all of these different things that were happening to me. Like my hair was falling out, I was fainting, I was passing out, insomnia, mood, this thing and that thing. And when I would go to the doctors, they're basically like, oh, must be stress or must be, here's some birth control for your headache or like some random things where they were not really able to pinpoint what was happening. Mm-hmm. And for me, over time, experiencing just a disalignment of what it is that I was doing in my life, which was research at that time, it wasn't necessarily what my passion was. I really wanted to be creative. I wanted to be in the world. Yes, I'm academically minded, but I also wanted to have like pathways of bringing the information and the things that we were researching out into real life. So part of my nervous system, basically this part of me that says, am I, existing in a format that I feel safe in? My body was saying no. And so it was manifesting as all these different weird things that I couldn't really pinpoint on. And I started to experience that the more that I started to do work in places that I didn't necessarily enjoy being, especially in heavy academia where you find like your work has, a very particular protocol or there's,
Yes.
there's elitism. You're also functioning under certain types of academia is has a lot of colonial perspectives in it. So
Yes.
existing within systems of being and studying and researching didn't really vibe for me. So I felt like I wanted to reach communities of color. I wanted to reach communities that were underrepresented, marginalized, underserved. And it kind of felt like here I'm doing all this like intellectual work that doesn't necessarily have like the impact that I wanted to have. I wanted to say like, okay, girls interested in math and sciences and perfectionism, but so what? Like we found the data, but then, and also how do we actually bring it into the world of
Instead of just putting it in a journal.
in a journal, which I think has its time and its place. And I continue to, collaborate with researchers and my mentors in academia still to this day. But the format of the impact was essentially itching in my body. I was like, okay, well, I see all these people, but we're going to wait like 10 years for this research to come out before, and some kind of, action comes out of this research. So for me, I started to notice that the more that I kept doing work that just felt like this aggressive force, I was forcing myself to like fit into systems, forcing myself into fit into certain ways of communication, even just like,
Right.
explaining things in a way that I felt really excluded the communities that I really wanted to reach. Oftentimes the communities didn't have access to education. They didn't have access to the ways that a lot of like scientific research is communicated. They were not communicated in layman's term and everyday languages. And so there just felt like such a gap of like, here's the people that I want to help and work with, but also I'm part of a system that is not bridging the gap between the science and the actual application.
Okay. And now I wanted to go back just for a second when
Yeah.
you talked about going to the doctors and getting all these varied random answers, because I feel a lot of times when women show up to doctor's office, especially marginalized people, uh, people who may not even have all the education, that sometimes solutions are thrown at us that, and especially women's things, is just like, oh, it's just, don't worry about it, it's no big deal. Did you feel dismissed?
Yeah, I mean, at that time, I didn't understand that I was being dismissed. I mean, in retrospect, it definitely feels that way. And especially when you're a young woman at that time, you're not just like a woman with like a little bit more life experience, but in your early 20s, you're kind of just like doing what you think the doctors are saying and you're trusting an authoritative figure. And there's all this research that says, the treatment of specifically women and women of color, particularly Black women who come
Mhm.
into medical and health spaces to get help. The doctors have this implicit bias to believe that women of color have a higher tolerance for pain than any other variation of people. And so
Mhm.
there's already this implicit bias that's going on. So I didn't really understand that I was being dismissed or understand, but there was an internal part of me that wasn't satisfied with the answers that I was getting. I wasn't satisfied with to be like, here's birth control for like insomnia. Like that doesn't like the connection, or
Right.
here's like,
You're thinking, oh, but the doctor knows best, so
exactly.
I'm just going to be quiet. And I love that you said that, because even as I look back over some of my experiences, I felt dismissed, but didn't know I felt dismissed until later on looking back. It's just this feeling of dissatisfaction and sometimes anger.
Oh yeah. There's anger too. And simultaneously at the same time, I had gone through this like pretty intense back injury where I experienced paralysis on my right side of the body for almost a year or so. And at that time, I was pursuing a lot of different things to like doctors and not chiropractors, the doctors and this thing and that thing and all these different things. But all of a sudden, the solution was like, oh, you have to get a horse tranquilizer injection in your spine every month, other than like other holistic ways and formats that are available. So I started to pursue things like the chiropractor and started to pursue things like the acupuncturist and found support and healing in that way. So that's kind of like my little into the holistic healing world, where it wasn't necessarily because I was like fully open to it from the beginning of like my health journey or my emotional journey or my physical journey. I was just like, I went to the doctors. They did what they needed to do. And then the conclusion was like a horse tranquilizer. You're literally trying to tell me that I need to get like an opioid injected into my spine. And I'm like 22, you know what I mean? At that
Right.
time, it's like, I'm like 22 and like, and I could have said yes. I could have, I had the agency to say yes. And then I'm also relying on like the support of my family who don't actually know any better either. We're immigrants
Right.
to the United States. Me, my parents, my brother, we're all immigrants to the United States. So we're
Oh,
kind of
you're
just
all
like,
first generation?
yeah, I'm known as a 1.5 generation. So I'm born and raised in Bangladesh. But then when I come here, I'm kind of this third culture kid, navigating between like, I'm raised there, but I'm also growing up here. So
Yes.
there's that kind of blend. So I'm also navigating like my parents not understanding or knowing. So they have this projection of like, oh, American health, American doctors, American healthcare, da, 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 versus, like we're used to living in Bangladesh and we're kind of like putting American healthcare on this pedestal. When you're in America, you have a different perspective and like a different angle and you have different complaints about it. But
Right.
from like a different country, when you're coming in, you don't really know like what you need to advocate for or how you need to advocate for it. And I also witnessed my mom going through her whole health struggles and different things and, different surgeries that she went through that were completely unnecessary. And now we understand
Oh,
that now with different collaborations of doctors and things like that. But it's like they didn't care. They were just kind of like, here's what's the quickest, easiest route to band-aid the problem that you have.
yes.
Whereas the holistic healing arts is really about not discrediting modern medicine and modern technologies that we have, and also considering the emotional and spiritual factors, the emotional, mental, spiritual factors that contribute to somebody's health and wellness. That's not necessarily found in an x-ray or found in a scan or in a blood sample. There are all these emotional factors that are related to why it is that our nervous system gets disoriented and dysregulated.
Oh, and that's a great segue into what is the nervous system and how it works. And you, please.
Yeah, I mean, I loved when you introed and you were like, get fired up because I know, your topic is all about like burnout and that the resiliency. But essentially, your nervous system is a set of nerves. It's a set of nerves in your body that act like an antenna that's always determining whether or not you feel safe. So the long story short version is like, am I safe? Yes or no? And so for any reason, if I feel that I'm unsafe, your nervous system is going to make you behave in a certain way, act in a certain way. So your thoughts, actions, your responses, the way that you perceive things in the world, you're going to send it through the lens of whatever your body decided. So if your body decides that you're not safe, and whether you're right or wrong, that's not the point at this point. It's like, it just says like, oh my gosh, email. I got an email. So your body gets triggered, or you hear the door knocking and you're like, oh, right. Like, so your body says like, oh, there's this jarring experience, but
Right.
you essentially go into one of 5 survival modes anytime your body decides that I'm not safe. So there's 3 that people have probably heard of. There's the fight response, the flight response, and the freeze response. And then there's 2 more that are more specific to women, which is
Mhm.
fawning and friendship. And this is where we see a lot of like people pleasing behavior, a lot of overcompensation behavior, a lot of guilt behavior. We see that. So when you say that I'm in survival and your body goes into one of these survival modes, if you're in fight mode, basically you feel overactivated, you feel
Yes.
agitated, your body does something called goes into hyper arousal, it goes into overactivation. So everything is like hyper alert, you're very much like overthinking, overcompensating, overdoing, hyper is like too much. And then flight is like running away. So this is like, I'm getting the hell out of here because like whatever I'm experiencing is too much. So this is where we
Yes.
experience a lot of like dissociation. We experience a lot of depression happens in this flight stage. It's like
Mhm.
running away from the problem. So in
Right.
terms of nervous system, it's your hypoarousal, meaning that
Yes.
you're underactivated. So it's harder to do things because you're feeling overwhelmed to take an action. Then you have your freeze, which is, I don't know what to do. So I'm kind of just stuck and frozen in time. And it's a very natural thing that your nervous system does. It's natural that your body goes into survival mode because that it's survival mode for a reason. It made you survive. But
Yes.
we're not back in the jungle anymore, right? So back in the day, your body is basically sending the information through, like, so if there was a big tiger or a lion or a big, threat, an enemy, what is my best chance of survival? Is my best chance to stay and fight this? Can I fight this group off? Can I fight this animal? And if that's my best chance, then that's what we're going to do. So it's a quick, you don't even need to think about it. Your body's going to go into that action. The second is like, is my best chance of survival like running away? Like, do I just like dip out because, if I start to fight and they're bigger, better, they have more tools, they have more resources, or this is a giant lion, I'm not going to, I'm going to die here. So if my best chance of survival is running away, then your body makes that quick decision. Like I'm out. And also the third is the freeze, which is like, maybe I don't make any sound or noise. I'm just going to go back into the bushes and just like act like I'm not here. So I'm not like going forward and I'm not going back, right? I'm not fighting and I'm not flighting, but I'm doing something that's just like, this is my best chance. So essentially your body is trained to do that. And it's a survival mechanism. But in today's world, what happens is that our survival mechanisms trigger when there's nothing to survive about. So when we get that email and we get into this like, this panic energy, it's like, it's just an email, but now your body's acting like, oh my gosh, this is the biggest thing. Like, oh, this has happened. And like all of the storytelling, your body's responding like there's a tiger in the room when it's there's kind of over dramatization of what your physical body is doing.
Yeah.
So what happens when you're regulating your nervous system is that you're learning to navigate between these ups and downs so that you can actually go into your thriving state. So you're not in survival state anymore. And for a lot of us, we don't actually understand that we're in survival, especially folks who are prone to burnout. They're in hyperactivation all the time. They're doing. They're in this hamster wheel. And the belief is that like, oh, I'm doing because I need to earn more or I need to do more. I have family to take care of. And while those things are true, simultaneously, while those things are true, the nervous system overactivates in its adrenal glands. It overactivates in its thyroid. It overactivates in all the way that it's like up. And once you get to the up, there's no way else to go except to crash down. You don't have this like natural kind of like slow progression, which is what your body wants to do. Like if you want to problem solve, you go up and then you go down and then you go up. So the switch wants to go in this like flow state. It doesn't want to go up, down, up, down, up, down. This is where we see a lot of the thyroid, adrenal dysregulation as well.
What I love about what you just said is that and you didn't say this specifically, but what I heard was that the stressor doesn't disappear. All the things that were getting you hyper aroused or hypo aroused don't disappear, but you can learn to regulate that so that you get into the flow state rather than, oh, I'm going to learn this thing and all my stressors are going to disappear. No.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So it's like those emails are going to still exist. Annoying people are still going to exist. People who have different thoughts and right. But you're just like not immediately triggered into, like arguing or, disagreeing or feeling like threatened or confronted as soon as something happens. And so like the more that you deal with your trigger, and there's different ways to do that, but the more that you deal with your trigger, the more safety your physical body starts to feel. So the triggers is not that they don't exist, is that how much weight they have with you and how they're impacting you and how they're impacting the way that you talk and respond and you think and the way that you even go into your own narratives. Right. Yeah. So we have a lot of avoidance behaviors that come when our nervous system is triggered. So it's the opposite of burnout where you're unable to do anything. Right. So the consequence of having a crash is like now you don't have any energy. You don't have motivation. You don't have the desire. You don't have like the chemicals, the physiological chemicals to take the action. Up here that you need to do X, Y, and Z things. And these are easy things, quote unquote, easy things to do. But your physical body, because it ran out of the energy, it can't behave towards those actions anymore. So where we want to be in nervous system language, it's known as window of tolerance. It's like that middle ground. So you're not just like, oh, here I am in the middle. It's like that ebb and flow. So when you go up, you don't crash down. You do go up, but you also go down. You go up and you go down. So you're not going up, down, up, down. It's not as dramatic of a range. In nervous system language, it's called window of tolerance. But in Buddhist philosophies, we call it Zen, we
Mhm.
call it equilibrium, we call it flow state. Your brain wave is also in a very particular way where earlier you asked me like these lights that I've got in the back, is that the breath? It's like, oh, it actually stands for many things. It's the flow, it's the brain, it's the sine wave. That's essentially what your nervous system wants to do too. It doesn't want to just be in one place. It wants to have the range of comfort of like, yeah, I'm activated, so let me solve the problem. And then also let me de-escalate, let me down regulate to being in this rest state. Let me go up and down, up and down. So for us, for many people, you're only in this up state. You're,
Mhm.
especially your burnout crowd, you're only in this up state where you have no option until you run out of all your energy. You are forced to come into the lowest part of the down stage. So
Right.
we don't want to do this up and down. And what happens is because we think that because this is where we are, we think that's the default. So
Mhm.
when we start to heal out of that default, your body actually panics because it says like, "Hey, what are you doing? You're not overdoing it anymore." Or you're not, you're not working as hard. Are you lazy? It's like, oh, so if you're used to working 80 hours and then all of a sudden you're working 40, it's kind of that difference of like your mind has to adjust. Like, is laziness because I'm not doubling what I should be doing? Or am I
Mhm.
doing too much? I'm not really able to understand. So your body goes into panic because it's used to doing 80 from survival. If I
So
don't do
that
80,
negative self-talk really starts to creep in, and
oh, right.
all that self-deprecation is, you're a lazy bum. What are you doing? You're going to lose your job. They're going to take it away from you. You're not going to have that project. You're not going to be able to pay your bills. And
Exactly. And imagine if you come from a place where you received a lot of benefits from being in that state. So say you came from poverty and the way that you got out of that is because you put in your 80 hours, you put in 120 hours, right? Like you put in
right,
these hours in order to get yourself out there. So your brain essentially sees the evidence of your hard work. Like it sees the
yes,
evidence of you overdoing. And so there is a time and place where it's like, if you got to put your head down and do the work and like do it, but then you also, when you reach that state of the success, are you still in the chase of more, 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 or can you settle down into this rest and digest state? And you'll
right.
see this in a lot of celebrity behaviors, actually. And there was this one interview with I don't know, I think I saw this on TikTok and whatnot, like The Rock, and he's this actor, right? And he has all these different, different things that he does in his life, and financially this guy's good. Like he never has to work ever again in his life, but he's
Right.
doing all these projects. So he went on this interview and they were basically asking him like, hey, do you have fun? And then he said, and he like really had to think about it, because he was like, I've never had a vacation. I've never like shut off. Right. So he came to this realization. And then like after that interview, he went on like other things that I saw that I'm sounding like a rock fan. I'm not, I just happened to see this. It seemed relevant to bring up. But he was saying like, yeah, I was asked this question on this podcast and I this is the first time I'm sitting with my feet up, you know? So it's like, yeah, you had to get out of it. You had to do your work and put your head down and just like be on the hustle to survive and like really put down your foundation and your roots. But at a certain point when you get there, that's when you have to train your body out of that. Otherwise you're on this perpetual hamster cycle of nothing. I'm kind of acting from a scarcity mindset
Mhm.
where I don't believe that what I have, I'm going to be able to sustain or maintain. So I need to keep getting more and more. And what's the next achievement? And more, more, more. And then you're in that burnout territory. And then all of a sudden, 30 years go by and you still never like got to enjoy the fruits of your labor or the benefits of, what it is that you were working for in the first place. You had your family, but you didn't spend time with them. You had the money, but you never took a vacation, or you bought a nice whatever, but you never like
Enjoyed it.
enjoyed it, right? Like it's just sitting. It's like it's just like in your cabinet for special days, but those special days never come.
And I love that you shared that part about you work so hard for all these things, and I have so many clients who have lost those things, like family members, friends, um, but they still had their job. They, the job was always faithful until it wasn't.
Mm,
And that's almost the most heartbreaking thing for them, that this thing that they dedicated their lives to, lost, made all these sacrifices for their family, that find it hard to appreciate it because they don't have the person. And then when the job is gone, they look around and there's nothing there.
There's nothing there. You know, this circles back to when you had asked me like how I even ended up getting into this work, and when I'm saying like doing things out of alignment, this is why a lot of people come into their midlife crises as well. You know, it's like there's a reason. It's like there is a milestone point where your body has had enough. So why does it have to get to a certain age where you're like, I hated this job, you know, I
15
put
years
in
ago.
15 years and I'm replaceable. 15 years, like I climbed the corporate ladder. I got the promotion. I did this and that. I checked the things off of my list. I got the house. I got the wife. I got the car. I got the husband, right? Like you check the things off the list, but this is not really from a place of alignment. Like, did you want these things or were you prescribed them from society? And there might be a mix. Like there might be things that are prescribed by society that you want and you truly desire and you crave. But we see this oftentimes in this like 40s age, 40s, 45s, and it's kind of a joke. It's a meme. It's like, oh yeah, you know, the guy like left his job, left his wife and his kids, and bought his
Corvette.
Ferrari. Yeah,
Yeah,
his Corvette, and he like went to live, you know, like in the he's having his like spiritual moment. You know what I mean? He's like over somewhere in like Burning Man now. You know what I mean? He's like having his
right.
like spiritual moment and like discovering emotions all of a sudden, and like you could be doing that work earlier on as well. You don't have to get to this age in order to like have it be a bottleneck to the point where like I literally cannot take it to the point I need to like fuck it all up and just go. You know what I mean? I just need to like
Yes.
get rid of it. You can make these aligned decisions throughout your life. And I think sometimes that is the scary thing to do, to in your 20s, leave the job, you know, or in
Right.
your 30s, like leave the job. Because if you were here another 5-10 years, like you will get to that thing that's on the pedestal, right? You would, that is on your
And,
pathway.
and then you find out you didn't want it.
You didn't want it. Or once you got it, you don't even care about it. Like the
Yes.
validation that you thought, it's like, do you like yourself any better now? You know what I mean? Like you could like yourself
Yes.
at any point, but you follow this trajectory of things that are out of alignment. And that's kind of
Right.
what I was meaning of like, yeah, I'm interested in research, and it's kind of come full circle where I'm still working with my research teams and the
Mhm.
people, the mentors and things like that. I'm still part of really cool research projects. I just don't do it in that format and career. I have a little bit more flexibility to consult and be a part of it in a way that is in alignment to one, the topics that I'm interested in, the audience that I want to talk to, even just the
Right.
platforms that I've built. I'm able to dissect it and communicate it in a way that's like, if you don't know how to read this data, I'll say it to you in words that are understandable. And that's where I find like the excitement of like, why bother doing anything if like you don't even get to share it with other people in any way.
Absolutely. And it's I love that you brought that up. I'm loving so many things that you're saying. I just last night I was talking to my graduate students in counseling. We're doing career counseling, and our last class was about how to keep fresh in your career and looking at all the different ways that you can use your degree, that it's not just sitting in front of someone and doing one-on-one or couples counseling, the face-to-face counseling, because if you do that your whole career, some people can do that their whole career and be happy, but I wanted them to be able to expand their minds and see all the various iterations, because maybe that's not your passion to sit there. I mean, now we have people in our field who consult on how do you keep people happy in the airport and on their planes? How do you train bots to be able to be good therapy companions? And there's so many things that you can do other than just counseling. So yeah, you can change and be more aligned.
100%. And when you're saying like, okay, you know, your graduate students, there's so many different things that the world of holistic health has opened up, where in the past we used to think holistic health is basically like, here's some lavender oil for all your problems. You know what I mean? There's like so much like separation of like our understanding of what holistic means. And for me, holistic is whole person. And there's so many elements of what creates wellness and well-being for a person. And part of my pathway in the healing arts and how I approach my clients, my mentees, my things that I do in my life is to say, how is it that you have skill sets in so many different other realms and categories? And what is the way that you can integrate that in a way that's going to make sense for the communities that you want to serve? So for
Yes.
example, a lot of the work that I do is I train breathwork facilitators. So a lot of the people who come to train with me are doctors and nurses and therapists, social workers. We have coaches, we have healers. There's so many different people who are in the wellness profession in whatever like title they have. So they're healing arts minded, but they're also people who are not just doing like Instagram healing. You know, it's not just like, oh, let me share like here, let me share like,
No, you did.
you know what I mean? It happens. It happens. But these are people who are putting together programs in their colleges. These are the professors who are, including some of my professors who are now doing like wellness retreats and wellness programs, or they are training their college students to have,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like wellness tools. So whether, you know, everybody's expression of that is going to be so different. And for
Right.
myself, I was one of the first in Southern California to receive grant funding from the state of California to bring holistic
Wow.
healing arts to clinical populations. So to be able to put breathwork and sound healing programs in women's shelters and veterans legions and low income schools in South LA. I'm not based in Los Angeles right now, but there's all these programs we were able to do about 10 years ago. And so all of these different things is like, that's my variation or version of what I think wellness and healing can look like if we're being aligned to our own authentic expression of it. And then I also have all these other mentees who have a complete different expression of that. They're leading retreats, or they're teaching, you know, they're teaching children. They have like youth programs. Somebody teaches breathwork at a prison, and there's all these different, there's all these different, you know, threads of holistic healing arts that are getting spread in such a beautiful, intentional way when we're not really discrediting practices that are actually indigenous based. So for example, breathwork, when we're saying nervous system, yeah, there's science language for the nervous system, but also indigenous cultures in India talked about the chakras and the energy gates. So they talked about the over and under activation of energy. So what did we just say? We said over or under activation of the nervous system. We also have elements in Vedic culture where we talk about over and under activation of elements, the elemental factors in your body. So all of these different cultures actually talked about doing too much and doing too little. And there's some middle ground, you know? And so whichever philosophy you look at, the main point of nervous system regulation, or even just coming into a balance within self, is finding that piece of that range, that ebb and flow that allows you to do things from a place of flow and not from a place of force.
Mm. Now, one of the things when you talk about the healing arts and holistic arts, and I think the whole wellness community, one of the ways that I feel like they're challenged, and maybe you might disagree with this, is I'll look at some of the seminars and everything that's going on, and the facilitators and keynote speakers, and there seems to be an absence of indigenous and marginalized populations being able to provide that. And I've always wondered, like, why is that? There seems to be almost a whitewashing of the field, or they don't get enough press. Do you disagree, or how do you?
Oh no, this is so welcome to Flow Breathwork. This is why me has created a, you know, the whole reason where when I started in the healing arts, I actually had a really big problem, especially when I was in Los Angeles, finding the spaces that really understood exactly what you're saying. Like there's roots of these practices, there's elders of these practices, there's closed practices, there's, you know,
Mm,
integrative studies, and it was basically kind of just diluted. So again, at that point, I didn't really understand that this is the language that I was leading to, but I felt in my body that I'm trying to fit and belong in spaces that does not really understand my lived experience. So this basically means my experience as an immigrant, my experience as a person of color, my experience as a woman, my experience as the age that I was in. It was very much right. It was very much like, here's the thing, and if you're anything outside of it, it doesn't fit. So I definitely experienced and navigated a lot of harm and violence in healing spaces where
Okay.
there was a lot of, just advocating for myself, including therapists that I went to. They were trying to say that there's no like cultural differences in like how familial structures are. Like, excuse me, now I'm here educating you. I'm just smarter than you. I'm sorry. Like, I'm just smarter than you. And so there was all of this kind of like
Yes.
dissociation where I was not feeling safe being held by spaces that not necessarily were intentionally violent, but they
Right.
were not doing their
Due
colonialism work,
diligence.
due diligence, but also some of the uncomfortable words of colonial work and imperialism work, and also their trauma informed work. They were doing like a 2-day seminar of like trauma informed, but it was like, okay, cool. Like that's not how that any of this goes. And having everything be for everyone is actually more harmful than really being intentional about curating and crafting things that are for a certain group or a certain tone or a certain way. There's intentionality in that. So I started to find that I actually didn't find these safe spaces. So that's how Always Play Studio started to come about, where I started to educate other people, training sound healers, and not just being like, oh, here's how you play bowls. Here's the science of it. It is that, but also it's like, here's how you play bowls, and you can leave it at that. But here's how these art forms were utilized to connect to spirits and connect to God and connect to source, and how indigenous traditions use this as a form of prayer. So whether you do it or not, like, I'm letting you know, like, that's just like the information I'm translating to you. But here's
Right.
also the science. And then started to train breathwork facilitators of like, Wim Hof didn't create breathwork, and like all these are not like new practices. We have history of it in East African traditions. We have history of it in New Zealand with the Maori people. We have history of
Yes.
it in the Vedas, which are written texts of in Indian traditions. In India, they're 10,000 years old. There's all of these, techniques that are written, and they all have their problem and issues and whatnot. But then it's like, oh, well, these are practices that have existed for so many millennia, right? And there's indigenous practices of talking to plants and talking to spirits. And when colonialism happened, we removed all the connection from people to land. We erased all the connection that people had, the synergistic ways that they were actually praying for rain and working with water spirits and working with energy and working with all this stuff. So now we call that stuff woo woo. We call the moon woo woo. We call all of this kind of woo woo. So there is this like big return to that's happening. And I'm kind of on that end
Conduit.
of, yeah, the conduit to it. And I love the people who come to study with me who understand, but may not have the language to put into what it is that they're trying to say. So connecting all these wisdom traditions of Ayurveda and yoga and energy sciences, and even like Eastern philosophies that are based in martial arts and understanding energy in the physical body, we're really bringing back all of these wisdom traditions that are passed down by elders. So whether you have a practice that is like elders based or an indigenous based, you understand the background of it. So even when you're facilitating it for 5-year-old kids in your school, or you're facilitating it for on an all white crowd or not white crowd, it doesn't matter. It's just that that you're holding reverence to the practices that you have. And that to me becomes a really important part of becoming a conscious facilitator, to do work that is intentional in a way.
So, what about some of those populations? Because I know there are probably some Christians who are listening and saying, "Oh, that is not something I should be doing. This is leading me outside of the context of my religion." Have you encountered people who maybe were interested in breath work and then began to learn more and said, "Oh, I can't do that"?
Yeah, I mean, if you're not into breath, then you would be dead. So, like, that is my short answer because, like, literally, your breath is your life force, you know? So, if you were like, were not breathing, then you would be dead, you know, unless you're a zombie and however, you know, like maybe AI or something, I don't know, but you would be dead. So, that is their personal journey through attaching religious and religious ideology, religious conditioning to something that is completely natural in their body. So there are certain people who combine um, breath and nervous system regulation and combine it to religious studies. But I would also say, especially if you're a Christian, you should look in the history of baptism. And baptism happened because they would literally dunk you to the point that you could not fucking breathe. And then you would have a death experience. So, you know, like the little cute dip that you guys see in the church nowadays, or like, you know, like the reborn, rebirth, like they would actually dunk you to the point where you would suffocate and then you would have a rebirthing experience. It would activate your pineal gland. So there's a history of breath work and the history of this, like, this reborn ideologies that are in pretty much any theology that if you like spend time reading about, you're going to find it. You're going to find examples. And also Christians, Jesus, there's a portion of it. This man, he went to India and the Himalayas for almost 3 years where he did these practices. And when he came back, that's when he was known to do all the miracle and the energy work, the energy healing. He went and studied with monks. There's a lot of text in the Vedas that describe that. And then there's also a lot of destruction of this, the literature. So the iterations of the book that you may have access to, they are rewritten and retranslated through multiple iterations. And sometimes people take out pages. They change
Like, I
words.
don't like it.
Yeah, I don't like it. They change pedophilia to homophobia. Like they change language. They change a lot of the things. So my short answer is like breath is the most natural thing that you have. The first thing that you do when you come into this world through the portal of a womb is they check if you're breathing. Because if you're not breathing, they got to smack you and they got to make sure that the water is out of your lungs. And if you're not breathing, then you're dead, right? So, yeah.
So if someone wanted to begin a basic practice, is there something that you could share with our audience to, I think everyone knows like box breaths and take a deep breath and breathe,
Sure.
but
Yeah, sure.
what would you recommend to at least dip their toe
Yeah.
into to healing arts?
My annoying answer is that there is a difference between breathing techniques and breath work as a healing tool. So
Oh,
breathing techniques is exactly what you're saying. It's like, yeah, the box breath. And actually, well, maybe I'll get it, but I wrote a book about the 33 breathing exercises that you can use. So I definitely recommend having, you know, a tool that you can kind of navigate through and say, okay, these techniques work for me. And there's over 200 techniques in this particular book. I just made it to 33, but there's actually over 200 breathing techniques. So certain ones are for mood, certain ones are for energy, certain ones are for sleep, some are for cooling the body, some are for heating the body. So breathing techniques are more so like the short term. What are you trying to do? What are you trying to feel? And you can just like pick one and then do that. Whereas breath work is slightly different because inherently a style of breath work, especially the style that I teach, is movement based. And it's also a breath that you're doing in and out to the mouth, which over oxygenates the body. So you're taking a breath into the mouth, into your belly, into your chest, and then you're exhaling. And you're doing this for almost 40 minutes to the point it
wow.
really, really triggers your nervous system. So the point of triggering your nervous system is actually the things that we were saying in the beginning, which is when you trigger your nervous system, your body starts to understand how to deal with discomfort. So oftentimes when you start breath work practices, not breathing, but breath work practices, your body will resist. It will say, I'm actually not used to experiencing emotions in my body. I'm not
What are you doing?
what are you doing? And your body's going to say, let's dissociate. Let's pick up our phone. This lady is weird. Da, da, da. But after a certain point, and I'll say this in a 4-part, which is I use a 4R protocol, which is my protocol of like how to work with breath work. If you're particularly using it for healing, not necessarily, oh, here I am like doing a breath work to just like, you know, cool my body. So the first R is to raise emotions into the body. So when we're saying you're systematically and rhythmically breathing, your body is going to really start to agitate. It's going to bring emotions, emotion, energy in motion. Literally the word emotion stands for energy in motion. So you start to bring up emotions into the body. And for people who don't feel safe having emotions, who don't know how to feel emotions, who have spent their life suppressing their emotions, this shit is hard. You know what I
Right.
mean? So we're always trying to jump to the end, which is the last four, which is the regulation. But there's 3 steps before that. So the first is
Mm.
raising the emotions into the body. And sometimes this can actually take weeks. So it's not just a one shot, like, here's the breath work and like you're good to go. For some people, it is. You could have like a profound session and whatnot. But for some people, it's about creating safety in the body for the emotions
Yes.
to actually come up. So the nervous system only heals at the pace of the nervous system. So if I'm like pushing you and your body's like, no, 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 you're not going to go there. Your body needs to stretch at its own pace. So first, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, and I'm sorry. You stimulated such a wonderful question for me. So, in the case of someone who's had to suppress their emotions for so long just because it wasn't safe in the environment, whether abusive, traumatic, whatever it is, their journey through breath work may be significantly longer because they've never known that you could have emotions. Like, what are those things? Is that what you're telling me?
Right. I mean, yes and no, because for some people, it's like they're ready to do the work. You know, they're just like, I'm tired of it. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's my emotions or not. Like, I'm ready to go. And so for some people, it might be longer. So it's one of these questions that it's dependent on the person's nervous system. So if you experience all this discomfort and you're just like, I'm going to go face it. Okay, then we're there, you know, like, all right, let's go. Like, and some people might go there and then come back. Or some
Mm.
people are just like, oh no, this is Pandora's box. Like, you're bringing up my daddy issues. You're bringing up like my mother memory. You're bringing up my childhood. Like, absolutely not. So it just
Mhm.
really depends on the safety of the nervous system. So we often see that it's about 3 to 4 sessions where that safety starts to expand. But if we got people there too fast, too soon, it's not going to be sustainable. It's kind of like a rubber band. Like, you stretch it too fast, it just snaps back. And then you're like, oh, well, I'm worse than I started. I'm not even at ground zero. I'm worse than where I started because I tried to do too much.
Mm. Okay.
Right.
I see.
So, so then the second part becomes, so raising the emotions. The second part is like recognizing that they're even coming. So exactly what you said, like the people who don't have access to it or haven't had that practice of experiencing their emotions in the way for whatever reason, trauma, this thing and that thing, the raising the emotions, like, okay, now I'm recognizing. So we're looking not at just like intellectualizing the emotions, we're recognizing in the physiological body, the psychosomatic mind body connection. So you might feel constriction. It might show up as heat. A lot of people experience heat or coolness. They experience tingling, colors, sensations. There's all of these ways that your physical body's talking to you because, again, emotions, energy in motion. So energy is going to start to move. So it's common that like one part is hot and the other part is cold and the other part is this and the other part is that, right? Like, there's all of these different things that happen. And what we're doing at this point is we're not attaching meaning. Like, what does a hot shoulder mean? It's like, I don't fucking know. You know what I mean? Like, but once we touch there and we
Right.
push, when we push and we find that tender, supple spot and you're pushing on it and it triggers a memory, now we're getting somewhere because it means what it means in your body, not in my body. Your
Ah.
physical body is holding it in a different way. And
Okay.
if you even think about emotions, like you already talk about emotions in um, linguistically, you understand they live in different parts of the body. Burden on your shoulder, heartache is at the chest, intuition, gut feelings at the stomach. You don't have intuition at your elbows. Intuition is like a butterfly feeling at the pit of
Mhm.
my stomach, like all of these things that are somatically based. So once we raise emotions, we recognize them and then we work on releasing them. So that could be through screaming, shaking, shouting, movement, dancing. A lot of the practices that I teach in flow breathwork, I often encourage people to just like get out and twerk and get out and shake their body and just like a little pop and locking. And it's not like, how do I do this to release my trauma? It's like, I don't know. Is that where your body, right? Like, is that what your body is showing? And this is
Right.
also where that indigenous practice comes through, where twerking was a spiritual practice. They would be there doing prayers to their crops and prayers to the spirits and the nature and connection to nature. They would be moving in tribal and primal ways to activate.
Okay.
Then comes the boring part, which is the regulation, which is like after you do all of that, then your body has that calm state. Then it can manage the triggers that come up. But when we're rushing to that regulation without going through the process, it's not as sustainable.
Oh, beautiful. That sounds like a beautiful journey. So, those who would like to be able to study this, they can contact you at alwaysplay.org.
Yes, they can study with me, whether you want to become a facilitator, practitioner, or you want to kind of just go through your own course of study without being a facilitator. You can get all the details at alwaysplay.org.
And I'd love for you to be able to issue a challenge to the audience. I always offer that to my guests to be able to bring something new into their lives. Is there something that you would like to challenge our audience with?
Yeah, I challenge you with 7 days of breathwork practices. You could also head to alwaysplay.org. There's a free 7-day practice there where there's videos of 7 days for 7 minutes. So it's just like if you don't want to do a 10-minute, if you don't want to do an hour-long breathwork, breathing, start to build a consistent practice where you're one, bothering showing up for yourself, and two, you're also interacting with this life force energy, which is your breath, and 7 minutes is pretty doable.
Thank you so very much. You've been listening to Shanila Sattar, who has been giving us some wonderful information about breathwork. I loved having you here, and I'm sure we're going to be hearing a lot of great things from you. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Dr. Kimberly, for having me and having me share.
Righty. Until next time. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. You've been listening to Leadership Beyond Burnout. I'm your host, Dr. Kimberly L. Wilson. You can find us here every Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and 2 p.m. Pacific. Until next time, we will see you then.